The moment the janitor opened his mouth and spoke fluent Japanese, the entire lobby went silent. Reina Saito, CEO, worth billions, stopped mid-breath. The arrogant manager's smirk died on his lips. And Elliot Barnes, the man they'd all ignored in his gray uniform, became the only person in the room who mattered. This is the story of how one quiet act of dignity shattered a world of prejudice. Welcome to this story. Stay until the end, you won't regret it. And comment below with your city so I can see how far this tale has traveled across the world. The Royal Grand Hotel didn't just sell rooms. It sold illusions, marble floors polished to mirrors, crystal chandeliers that scattered light like broken stars, leather chairs positioned at angles that whispered exclusivity. The air itself seemed expensive, perfumed with something floral and vaguely European piped through vents alongside the temperature-controlled breeze. And the staff, they smiled, always smiled. But Elliot Barnes had learned to read the difference between a real smile and a professional one. After 6 months pushing a mop cart through these halls, he'd become an expert in the language of fake warmth. It was 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday when everything changed. Elliot was in his usual corner near the west entrance, the place where the afternoon sun cut through the floor-to-ceiling windows and made the marble glow gold. His daughter Charlotte had a dentist appointment at 5:30, which meant he needed to finish the lobby clock out by 4:45, sprint to the bus stop, and pray traffic cooperated. Single father math. He'd gotten good at it. He was wringing out his mop when he heard the first raised voice. "Ma'am, I need you to speak English. This is America." Elliot looked up. At the concierge desk, a woman stood perfectly still, mid-30s maybe, black business suit tailored so precisely it looked painted on. Hair pulled back in a style that suggested she didn't have time for nonsense. And on her face, nothing. No expression, no emotion, just silence. Behind the desk, Marcus Whitfield, the day manager, leaned forward with that smile. The professional one, the one that didn't reach his eyes. "Ma'am," Marcus's voice had that edge now, that barely concealed irritation wrapped in customer service packaging. "Do you speak English?" The woman didn't respond, didn't even blink. Elliot's hand tightened on the mop handle. "Jesus Christ," muttered one of the bellhops, a kid named Tyler who spent most of his shifts on his phone. "What's her problem?" Around the lobby, other guests had started to notice. An older couple near the elevators whispered to each other. A businessman in an expensive suit glanced up from his laptop, eyebrows raised. Marcus's smile was cracking now. "Ma'am, if you cannot communicate with me, I cannot help you. I'm going to need you to—" The woman reached into her bag, slow, deliberate, and pulled out a passport. She placed it on the marble counter with a soft click. Marcus snatched it up, flipped it open, and his face went through several interesting colors. "You're Japanese." No response. Just those dark eyes, steady and unreadable. Okay. Marcus exhaled through his nose. "Does anyone here speak Japanese? Anyone?" Silence, the kind that felt heavy. "This is ridiculous." Marcus turned to his assistant, a young woman named Bethany who looked like she wanted to sink through the floor. "Call upstairs, see if anyone in events or catering—" "She probably speaks English." Tyler interrupted louder than necessary. "They all do. She's just being difficult." Elliot's jaw clenched. The woman's expression didn't change, but something in her posture shifted, just slightly. A tightening around the shoulders that most people wouldn't notice. Elliot noticed. Marcus slapped the passport on the counter. "Ma'am, I understand you may be disoriented from your flight, but this is a 5-star hotel. We have standards, and part of those standards is basic communication. So I'm going to ask you one more time. Perhaps she's deaf," suggested an older woman in pearls, stage whispering to her husband. "Nah, look at her," her husband replied, not bothering to lower his voice. "She's just pulling some kind of power play." These corporate types, they think, excuse me. The voice cut through the lobby like a blade. Everyone turned. Reina Saito, because that was the name in the passport, though Elliot didn't know it yet, turned as well. A woman in a designer pantsuit stalked across the marble heels, clicking like gunshots. Mid-50s, blonde. The kind of blonde that came from a salon charging $400 minimum. Her smile was sharp enough to draw blood. "I am so sorry for this inconvenience," the woman said, not looking at Reina at all. She zeroed in on Marcus instead. "Has she been checked in yet?" "No, Ms. Vanderbilt, she won't." "Then get her checked in." The smile never wavered. "I don't care if you have to use Google Translate. She's a guest. Treat her like one." "Yes, ma'am." Marcus's ears went red. Ms. Vanderbilt finally looked at Reina. Her smile widened, but her eyes stayed cold. "Welcome to the Royal Grand. We'll have you sorted out in just a moment." She spoke slowly, loudly, the way Americans always do when they think volume equals comprehension. Reina's expression remained perfectly neutral. In his corner, Elliot felt something twist in his chest, something old and familiar and painful. He knew that look, that careful, controlled blankness. He'd seen it before years ago in another country, on faces of students who'd been dismissed, talked over, treated like children because their English wasn't perfect. He'd seen it on his wife's face that first year in America before she'd mastered the accent, before she'd learned to smile through the microaggressions, before the cancer took her. Marcus was typing frantically now, shooting glances at Ms. Vanderbilt. If she could just provide a credit card. Reina placed a black American Express card on the counter. No words, just the card. Marcus's hands fumbled as he picked it up. "Right, yes, okay." He swiped at his professional mask, slipping with every passing second. "And the reservation should be under—" Silence. "Ma'am, I need a name, your name, for the reservation." Tyler laughed, actually laughed. "Dude, she's messing with you." "I don't think she understands," Bethany whispered to him. "She understands," Marcus snapped. "She's just being—" "What? Being what?" The words came out before Elliot could stop them. Every head in the lobby turned. The businessman, the pearled woman, Ms. Vanderbilt, Marcus, Tyler, Bethany, and Reina. Elliot stood there, mop still in hand, water dripping onto the floor he'd just cleaned. Marcus's face went purple. "Excuse me, Barnes, get back to work." "She's not being anything," Elliot said quietly. "She's standing there, waiting. You're the one who's—" "That's enough." Ms. Vanderbilt's voice could have frozen nitrogen. "Mr. Barnes, return to your duties, now." Elliot's hands shook. He should stop. He knew he should stop. Charlotte needed this job. They needed the insurance, the paycheck. He couldn't afford to. Reina's eyes met his. And in that moment, Elliot saw past the expensive suit, past the neutral expression, past the walls. He saw exhaustion, grief, the kind of weariness that came from fighting battles you never asked for. He saw his wife's eyes in the hospital, when the doctors talked over her like she wasn't there. His feet moved before his brain caught up. "Wait," he said. "Barnes." Elliot walked across the lobby, the mop cart forgotten. Every eye tracking him like he was something that didn't belong, and they weren't wrong. In his gray uniform with the hotel logo, his work boots scuffed and comfortable, he was a stain on their perfect picture. He stopped a respectful distance from the desk, and then, in perfect Kyoto-accented Japanese, Elliot Barnes spoke. "Irashaimase. O tsukare-sama deshita. Ryoko wa ikaga deshita ka?" "Welcome. You must be tired. How was your journey?" The lobby didn't just go quiet, it went silent. The kind of silence that happens when the world tilts sideways and nobody knows which way is up anymore. Reina Saito's eyes widened, just a fraction, just enough. "Anata wa Nihongo o hanashimasu ka?" Her voice was soft, careful. "You speak Japanese, hi Sukoshi." Elliot smiled, a real smile, the first one he'd worn in this building that actually meant something. "Yes, a little." Sukoshi Janai. A ghost of a smile touched Raina's lips. More than a little. What the hell is happening right now? Tyler whispered. Marcus looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. Barnes, what are you? Elliot ignored him. Koko no sutafu wa setsume ga heta des. Gomen nasai. The staff here are not good at explaining things. I apologize. Anata wa ayamaru hitsuyo wa arimasen. Raina's shoulders relaxed. Barely, but enough. You don't need to apologize. Demo watashi wa ocha omote kite agemasu. Yoroshi desuka. But I can bring you some tea. Would that be all right? Raina studied him for a long moment, taking in the uniform, the mop cart, the gray hair at his temples, the calluses on his hands. Sore wa kansha shimasu. That would be appreciated. Elliot turned to Marcus, switching back to English. Her name is Reina Saito. She has a reservation under Saito Industries. She'll take the executive suite on the 20th floor, non-smoking with a view of the park, if possible. She'd like green tea brought up sencha if you have it, and she'll need a quiet workspace with reliable internet for a conference call at 7 p.m. Tokyo time. He paused. Which is 6 a.m. our time, so she'll need a 5:30 wake-up call. Marcus's mouth opened, closed, opened again. How did you? She just told me. Elliot's voice was calm, even, in Japanese. Ms. Vanderbilt had gone very still. Mr. Barnes, I don't think kanojo wadamate ite kudasai. Reina's voice was quiet but carried across the marble like a knife. Tell her to be quiet. Elliot almost laughed, almost. Instead, he just nodded slightly and turned back to Reina. Kanojo wa keiyebu no hito desu. Watashi wa tada no seisoin desu. Watashi wa kanojo ni meirei suru koto wa dekimasen. She's management. I'm just a janitor. I can't tell her what to do. Tada no seisoin janai. Reina's eyes were sharp now, focused, not just a janitor. So desu. Demo kyo wa so desu. Perhaps, but today I am. Something shifted in Reina's expression. Recognition maybe, or understanding. Anata wa sensei deshita ne. It wasn't a question. You were a teacher, weren't you? Elliot's chest tightened. Mukashi wa. Once upon a time. I'm sorry, Ms. Vanderbilt cut in her voice. Ice. But this is highly irregular. Mr. Barnes, you are maintenance staff. You have no authority to. I'm helping a guest, Elliot said simply. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? By abandoning your post, by interfering with the check-in process. The check-in process was failing. I'm fluent in Japanese. She needed help. I helped. He met Ms. Vanderbilt's glare without flinching. Would you prefer I'd left her standing here while Marcus tried to pantomime his way through a reservation? Tyler snorted, tried to cover it with a cough. Failed. Marcus's face was approaching crimson. You smug son of a... Marcus! Ms. Vanderbilt's voice cracked like a whip, then softer to Reina. Ma'am, we sincerely apologize for any confusion. If you'll allow Mr. Whitfield to complete your check-in, we'll have you in your room shortly. Reina looked at Elliot. He gave a small nod. Daijobu desu, karera wa ima o tetsudai shimasu. It's okay, they'll help you now. Anata wa, and you, watashi wa suji ni modorimasu. I go back to cleaning. Sor wa zanen desu. That's unfortunate. Before Elliot could respond, Reina turned to Marcus. When she spoke, her English was perfect, flawless, with just the hint of a British accent that suggested expensive private education. The executive suite will be fine. Have the tea sent up at 5 p.m., green, not black, and I'd like to speak with whoever manages your staffing. Marcus blinked. You speak English? Fluently. Reina's smile was cold. I also speak Mandarin French and German, but I chose not to, because I wanted to see who in this building possessed actual human decency. She glanced at Elliot. I found one person. The lobby was frozen. Now, Raina continued, finish my check-in and perhaps consider that silence isn't always ignorance. Sometimes it's a test. She picked up her black card. One you failed. Ms. Vanderbilt's expression could have curdled milk. Marcus fumbled with the computer, hands shaking. And Elliot, quiet, invisible. Elliot Barnes turned back to his mop cart, feeling 24 pairs of eyes burning holes in his back. He'd made it maybe 5 steps when Raina spoke again. Matsu. Wait. He stopped. Anata no namae wa, your name, Elliot Barnes. Arigato gozaimasu, Barnes-san. Thank you, Mr. Barnes. He nodded, didn't trust himself to speak. As he walked back to his corner, Elliot could hear the whispers starting, could feel the shift in the atmosphere, could sense Ms. Vanderbilt's fury radiating across the marble like heat. He'd just made his life very, very complicated. But as he picked up his mop and got back to work, watching Raina disappear into the elevator, with her spine straight and her dignity intact, Elliot couldn't bring himself to regret it. Some things mattered more than keeping your head down. His wife had taught him that. By the time Elliot clocked out at 4:43, the story had already spread. The break room was buzzing with it. Tyler was doing a dramatic reunion for the night shift crew, complete with exaggerated Japanese accent that made Elliot's skin crawl. One of the housekeepers, Maria, caught his eye and gave him a sympathetic look. "You okay, Chico?" she asked quietly as he grabbed his jacket from his locker. "Fine. That was gutsy, what you did. It was just translation." "Mm-hmm." Maria's knowing smile suggested she saw right through him. Just translation that made Vanderbilt look like an idiot. You better watch your back. "I know. I'm serious, Elliot. She doesn't forget this stuff." "I know," he repeated softer. Maria squeezed his shoulder. "Your girl got her dentist appointment today." "Yeah, if I catch the 4:50 bus." "Then go. Run. I'll cover if anyone asks." Elliot didn't run. His knees weren't what they used to be, but he walked fast, taking the service stairs 2 at a time and pushing through the back exit into the autumn chill. The bus was pulling up just as he reached the stop. Small miracle. He collapsed into a seat near the back, pulled out his phone, and texted Charlotte's sitter, "On my way. Traffic okay. Be there by 5:15. The reply came instantly. "She's nervous. Won't stop asking about cavities." Elliot smiled despite everything. Charlotte was 10 and terrified of dentists, convinced every visit would end in disaster. Last time she'd made him promise pinky swear that he wouldn't let them drill holes in her teeth, as if he had any control over dental decay. The bus lurched into traffic. Elliot leaned his head against the window and closed his eyes. "Anata wa sensei deshita ne." He hadn't been called a teacher in 3 years, hadn't thought of himself as one in longer. Professor Elliot Barnes, specialist in East Asian linguistics, published author, guest lecturer at Kyoto University for 2 years, where he'd met Yuki. Beautiful, brilliant Yuki, who'd corrected his Kyoto ben with a smile that made him forget how to breathe. They'd married in a small ceremony near Arashiyama, had Charlotte in a hospital overlooking the Kamo River, built a life that felt like something out of a dream, and then Yuki got sick. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, diagnosed too late. They'd moved back to the States for treatment, burned through their savings, remortgaged everything. She died on a Tuesday, rainy. Charlotte had been 7, and Elliot had been adrift. The university had been sympathetic, gave him leave, told him to take his time, but time didn't heal this. Time just passed. He'd tried going back to teaching, couldn't stand in front of students and pretend words mattered when the only words he wanted to say were, "Come back, please come back." So he'd quit, sold the house, moved to a cheaper apartment, found work that didn't require thinking. Mopping floors turned out to be meditative, quiet, simple, safe. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Elliot frowned and opened the text. "Mr. Barnes, this is Raina Saito. The concierge gave me your contact information. I hope that's not inappropriate. I wanted to thank you properly for your kindness today. If you're free this evening after 7, I'd be honored to buy you tea. Room 2047. Elliot stared at the message. The concierge had given out his number. That was definitely against protocol. Then again, after today, protocol seemed like a distant concept. He shouldn't go. He should clock in tomorrow, keep his head down, let this whole thing blow over. But something in him, something he'd thought died with, Yuki, stirred. Sometimes silence isn't always ignorance. Sometimes it's a test. Before he could overthink it, Elliot typed, I finish my daughter's dentist appointment around 6:30. I could stop by around 7:15. If that works. The reply was immediate. Perfect. I'll have real sencha waiting, not the hotel's sad tea bags. Despite everything, the day's chaos, the looming consequences, the fear coiled in his gut. Elliot smiled. The bus rolled on toward Charlotte's dentist, carrying him forward, whether he was ready or not. Charlotte's teeth were fine, no cavities. The relief on her face when the dentist announced it made Elliot's heart squeeze. See? He squeezed her hand as they walked to the bus stop. I told you it would be okay. You always say that. Charlotte's voice was soft, careful. She spoke like someone testing ice, never quite sure if it would hold. The speech therapist said it was anxiety. Elliot knew it was grief wearing a different mask. And I'm always right. She almost smiled. Sometimes. They rode home in comfortable silence, Charlotte's head resting against his arm. The city lights were coming on, painting the windows gold and amber. Somewhere in that sprawl of buildings, Reina Saito was waiting with tea and questions Elliot wasn't sure he wanted to answer. At their apartment, a 2-bedroom walk-up in a neighborhood that smelled like curry and car exhaust, Mrs. Chen from downstairs was waiting by their door. Successful dentist, she asked in her thick Cantonese accent. No cavities, Charlotte announced, suddenly proud. A good girl, smart girl, Mrs. Chen beamed. Your daddy pay me tomorrow. Yes, tonight I have mahjong. Tonight? Elliot checked his watch. 6:47. Mrs. Chen, I have to go back out for a bit. Just an hour, maybe 2. 2 hour, Elliot, you work too much. It's not work, it's complicated. Mrs. Chen's eyebrows climbed toward her hairline. Complicated, you have lady friend. No, it's a work thing, sort of. Sort of lady friend, I see. Mrs. Chen was grinning now. Okay, I watch Charlotte, you go be complicated. But you bring her back by 9, yes, old lady needs sleep. Charlotte tugged his sleeve. Where are you going? The hotel, just to talk to someone. About today. Word traveled fast. Elliot had texted her sitter to let her know he might be late, mentioned the incident in passing. Apparently passing became a full debriefing. Yeah, about today. The lady you helped? Yes. Charlotte studied him with those dark eyes, Yuki's eyes sharp and knowing beyond their years. Mrs. Rivera said you were brave. Mrs. Rivera talks too much. She said you spoke Japanese, like you used to with Mom. And there it was. The thing that lived in every conversation, the ghost that never left. Yeah, Elliot said quietly, like I used to with Mom. Charlotte nodded slowly, then so soft he almost missed it. Good. 20 minutes later, Elliot stood outside room 2047 in clothes that weren't his work uniform jeans, a button-down that had seen better days, jacket with a coffee stain on the cuff he'd tried and failed to remove. He felt ridiculous. What was he doing here? He raised his hand to knock. The door opened before his knuckles made contact. Reina stood there in casual clothes, well casual for someone who probably had a personal shopper. Black slacks, cream silk blouse, bare feet. Her hair was down, which somehow made her look younger and more tired at the same time. Punctual, she observed. Old habit. Good habit. She stepped aside. Come in. The executive suite was 3 times the size of Elliot's apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the park, now dark except for the lamplit paths winding through trees. A laptop sat open on the desk, video call paused mid-screen, papers everywhere, the controlled chaos of someone who worked too much. On the coffee table, a proper tea set. Clay pot small cups, the kind of setup that took knowledge and care. "You weren't kidding about real sencha," Elliot said. "I never kid about tea." Raina gestured to the sofa. "Please, sit." He sat. She poured. The ritual of it, water, leaves, waiting, felt like meditation. "Your daughter," Raina said. "The dentist appointment went well." You remembered that. You checked your watch 3 times in the lobby. Nervous parent mathematics. "I recognize it." She handed him a cup. "I have nieces, my brother's children. The youngest is terrified of doctors. Charlotte's terrified of everything." The words came out before Elliot could stop them. "Sorry, that sounds honest." Raina sipped her tea. "Honesty is refreshing. I've spent the last 6 hours in video conferences where everyone lied with smiles." Elliot wrapped his hands around the cup, letting the heat seep into his palms. "Why didn't you speak in the lobby? Why did you?" "I asked first." A ghost of a smile. "Fair." Raina set down her cup. "I was tired. 14-hour flight, delayed twice, lost luggage. And then I walk into that lobby and see those faces, you know the ones. The professional masks that don't quite hide the judgment." She paused. "I wanted to see what would happen, if anyone would try, really try. That's a dangerous game. Most games are." Her eyes met his. "Your turn. Why did you speak?" Elliot took a long sip. The tea was perfect, of course it was. "I saw something in your face," he said finally. "A look I recognized. My wife used to get it. That careful blankness when people talked over her, around her, like she wasn't there." He stared into his cup. She was Japanese, brilliant, funny, had a PhD in linguistics. But some people couldn't see past the accent. She passed 3 years ago. "I'm sorry." And Raina said it like she meant it. Not the automatic condolence people threw around like confetti. Real sorrow. "Cancer. How did you have the look." She refilled his cup. "My mother, 5 years ago, lung cancer, never smoked a day in her life." They sat in silence, not the awkward kind, the kind that happens when 2 people recognize the same wound. "You were a teacher," Raina said eventually. "I could tell. Linguistics professor, specialized in Japanese language acquisition, taught at Georgetown for 8 years, then did a fellowship at Kyoto University." The words felt strange in his mouth, like a story about someone else. "That's where I met Yuki. She was my translator, then my colleague, then everything. And now you clean floors." "Now I clean floors." "Why?" The question hung between them, simple, devastating. "Because thinking hurts," Elliot said. "Linguistics meant Japan, meant Yuki, meant everything I lost. Teaching meant standing in front of people and pretending to have answers. I don't have answers anymore. I have a mop and a daughter who barely speaks, and an apartment that smells like someone else's cooking." He set down his cup before he could break it. "Floors don't ask questions. Floors just need to be clean." Raina nodded slowly. "My company wanted me to open the New York office, expand operations. I said no 3 times. They kept asking. My father kept pushing. He built Saito Industries from nothing, and he thinks I should too." She laughed, but it was hollow. "So here I am, in a country where people like your manager think my silence means stupidity. Marcus is an idiot. Marcus is a symptom." Raina stood, walked to the window. The city glittered below like scattered diamonds. "Do you know what happened after you left the lobby? I got dirty looks from management. You went viral." Elliot blinked. "What?" "Someone filmed it, the whole thing. You walking across the lobby, speaking Japanese. Making me smile, apparently. I don't do that often, according to Twitter. Making an entire hotel staff look like fools." She turned. "It has 4 million views. People are calling you the janitor who spoke her language. There are think pieces, op-eds. Someone started a hashtag. The room tilted slightly. You're joking. I don't joke about social media metrics. Raina pulled out her phone, tapped, showed him the screen. There he was, grainy footage probably from someone's cell phone, walking across that marble floor in his gray uniform. The audio was tinny but clear enough. His Japanese, Raina's surprised response, the frozen faces of everyone watching. The caption, "This janitor speaks fluent Japanese and just taught an entire hotel about dignity. 4.2 M views." "Oh God," Elliot whispered. "The comments are interesting." Raina scrolled. "Half the internet wants to buy you drinks. The other half is demanding the hotel fire everyone who was rude to me. There's a petition. 17,000 signatures so far. This isn't... I didn't want... I know." Her voice was gentle. "But you can't unring a bell, and the hotel knows. Ms. Vanderbilt called me 3 times. Very apologetic, very concerned about brand image. She wants to meet with you tomorrow." Elliot's stomach dropped. "To fire me. To control the narrative." Raina sat back down. "They're scared a viral video showing their staff being dismissive to a high-value guest. While a janitor shows more grace than their entire management team, it's a PR nightmare. So I'm fired. Not yet. But they'll try to silence you, make you sign something, non-disclosure probably, maybe offer a settlement to go quietly." She leaned forward. "Don't! I need this job. What Charlotte needs is a father who stands up." Raina's voice was sharp now. "You did something beautiful today. You saw someone struggling and you helped, without thinking about consequences or protocols or keeping your head down. You were human. That matters. Being human doesn't pay rent." "No, but I do." Elliot stared at her. Raina didn't blink. "Saito Industries is opening an office here. We need translators, cultural consultants, people who understand both languages, both worlds. You're overqualified for janitorial work, and we both know it." She paused. "I'm offering you a job, real job, benefits, salary that doesn't require you to calculate bus schedules around dentist appointments. You don't even know me. I know you speak Kyoto Ben with perfect accent. I know you recognized pain in a stranger's face and chose kindness over career safety. I know you were a professor who loved his wife enough to give up everything when she died." Raina's eyes were steady. "I know enough. I can't. Yes, you can, but you won't. Because you're comfortable being invisible, being the janitor no one sees. It's safer than being Professor Barnes again, isn't it?" Her words cut clean. "Because if you're just a janitor, you can't fail, can't disappoint anyone, can't lose anything else." Elliot stood abruptly. "You don't know anything about... My mother died telling me to be brave." Raina's voice cracked, just slightly, just enough. "Said I was hiding behind the company, behind my father's expectations, behind being perfect." She looked up at him. She was right, and I hated her for it. Still do sometimes, because being brave is exhausting and terrifying, and I'd rather just not. "Then why are you here in New York? Because sometimes you have to do the terrifying thing, even when it hurts." She stood too. "That's what you did today, whether you meant to or not." They stood there, 2 people shaped by loss, neither quite sure what to do with the space between them. Elliot's phone buzzed. Text from Mrs. Chen. "Charlotte asking for you. Come home soon." "I need to go," he said quietly. "Of course." Raina walked him to the door. "Think about the offer. You don't have to answer now." "I appreciate it, really, but Elliot," she stopped him with a hand on his arm. "I'm not your wife. I'm not asking you to love Japan again, or teach again, or be who you were. I'm just asking you to consider being more than invisible." He nodded, couldn't speak past the tightness in his throat. "One more thing." Raina pulled a business card from her pocket. "Before my mother died, she told me about a teacher, American man. came to Kyoto with his wife. The wife taught traditional tea ceremony to international students. My mother took her class, said the woman, taught her that silence could be powerful, that you don't always need words to speak truth. Elliot's hand shook as he took the card. The teacher's wife died of cancer. He left Japan. My mother always wondered what happened to him. Raina's smile was sad. Her name was Yuki Barnes, and I think I just found him. The world stopped spinning. You... Elliot couldn't breathe. Your mother was Keiko Saito. She took tea ceremony lessons in Kyoto in 2017, studied under Yuki Barnes for 6 months before work transferred her back to Tokyo. Raina's eyes were bright. She talked about your wife until the day she died. Said Yuki taught her that strength looks like stillness, that sometimes the quietest people hold the most truth. Elliot braced himself against the doorframe, memories flooding back. Yuki in their Kyoto apartment preparing for her evening classes, the sound of her voice explaining the principles of Chano-yu to eager students, the way she'd come home glowing talking about the woman from Tokyo who asked the most beautiful questions. Keiko, he whispered, she sent us flowers when Yuki got sick. A huge arrangement, cherry blossoms, even though it wasn't season. She flew to Oregon to find them, cost her a fortune. Raina's voice was thick. She said Yuki deserved beauty. They stood there in the doorway of a hotel room in a city far from Kyoto, connected by a thread of grief and grace that neither had expected to find. The world is smaller than we think, Raina said finally. Or bigger, Elliot straightened. Big enough that we keep finding each other. Think about the job offer. I will. And Elliot. She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. Thank you for today, for seeing me, for being brave even when you didn't want to be. He left before he could cry. The elevator ride down felt surreal. The lobby, that same marble expanse where everything had changed, was quiet now. Night shift, different faces. The businessman was gone. The pearled woman was gone. Just a tired couple checking in and a bellhop scrolling through his phone. Elliot walked past his mop cart still parked in the corner where he'd left it. For the first time in 3 years, he didn't feel invisible. He felt terrified. The bus ride home was a blur. His mind kept replaying Raina's words. Keiko Saito. The name unlocked 1,000 memories. Yuki talking about her favorite student, the woman who cried during the first tea ceremony, who sent them a card when Charlotte was born, who'd somehow known when Yuki died and sent those impossible cherry blossoms. His phone buzzed. Unknown number, but he knew who it was before he opened it. Tomorrow 2 p.m. Ms. Vanderbilt wants to meet. I'll be there too. You don't face this alone. Elliot stared at the message, at the offer embedded in those words, the promise of someone standing beside him when the world tried to push him back down. He typed, "Thank you." Her reply was instant. "Yuki would be proud of you. Keiko told me that much." And then, "Sleep well, Professor Barnes." He read that last message 3 times before pocketing his phone. Professor Barnes. He'd forgotten what that name felt like, how it fit, how it carried weight and memory, and a version of himself he'd buried. Mrs. Chen met him at the door, looking annoyed and charmed in equal measure. "Your daughter," she said, "is stubborn girl, won't sleep until you home." "Sorry, lost track of time." Lost track of time with lady friend, I bet." "Mrs. Chen, is good, you too young to be sad forever." She patted his cheek. "Charlotte is in her room, reading. I tell her only 15 minutes, but she's sneaky." Elliot found Charlotte curled up in bed, flashlight under the covers, book propped on her knees. When she saw him, the flashlight clicked off. "You're late," she accused. "I know, I'm sorry." "Was it okay, the meeting?" "Yeah." Elliot sat on the edge of her bed. "It was complicated, but okay." Charlotte studied him with those 2 knowing eyes. "You look different." "Different how?" "Less tired." She paused. "You smiled at something on your phone, on the bus, I saw." Of course she did. Charlotte noticed everything. The lady I helped today, Elliot said carefully, she knew Mom a long time ago, back in Japan. Charlotte sat up straighter. Really? Her mother took tea ceremony classes from Mom. They were friends. What's her name? Reina. Reina Saito. Charlotte tested the syllables. Reina? That's pretty. Yeah, it is. Are you going to see her again? Such a simple question, such a complicated answer. Maybe, Elliot said. She offered me a job, translation work, with her company. Would you take it? I don't know. Charlotte was quiet for a long moment. Then, Mom would want you to. Elliot's throat closed. Sweetheart, she told me, before, when she was sick. Charlotte's voice wavered but held. She said you'd want to hide after she was gone, that I had to make sure you didn't hide forever. Tears now slipping down her cheeks. I've been waiting for you to stop hiding. Elliot pulled her into his arms, this brave, impossible daughter who'd been carrying her mother's wishes like stones in her pockets. I'm sorry, he whispered into her hair. I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry. Charlotte's voice was muffled against his shirt. Just don't hide anymore, please. Okay. The word barely made it out. Okay. They stayed like that until Charlotte's breathing evened out and sleep claimed her. Elliot tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and retreated to his own room. He didn't sleep, couldn't. His mind was too full of Reina's offer, Yuki's memory, Charlotte's tears, and the viral video that had somehow turned his invisible life into something visible. At 11:47 p.m., he opened his laptop and searched for the video. 6 million views now. The comments had multiplied, some supportive, some angry, some calling him a hero, some calling him a show-off. The internet in all its chaotic glory had opinions. But one comment stopped him cold. This is what dignity looks like, not wealth, not position, just one human seeing another and choosing kindness. We need more of this. 17,000 likes. Elliot closed the laptop. Tomorrow he'd face Ms. Vanderbilt, face the consequences of choosing kindness over invisibility, face whatever came next. But tonight he sat in the dark of his small apartment and let himself remember what it felt like to be Professor Barnes, to be someone who mattered, to be seen. It hurt. God, it hurt. But maybe, just maybe, it was the good kind of hurt, the kind that meant healing, the kind that meant forward. His phone buzzed one more time. Reina again. P.S. Charlotte is lucky to have you, and you're lucky to have her. Don't forget that tomorrow when they try to make you small again. Elliot smiled in the darkness. Tomorrow would be brutal. He knew that. But for the first time in 3 years, he wasn't facing it alone. And that made all the difference. Morning came too fast and too slow at the same time. Elliot woke at 5:30 to Charlotte already dressed for school, sitting at their tiny kitchen table with cereal and that worried look she wore when trying to be brave. You okay? She asked. The role reversal stung. 10 years old, and she was checking on him. I will be, he said, and meant it more than he expected. Promise, promise. She nodded, satisfied in the way children are when adults give them the words they need, even if everyone knows the truth is more complicated. Mrs. Chen picked Charlotte up for school at 7:15. Elliot had 4 hours and 45 minutes to prepare for a meeting that would either change everything or confirm that invisible was safer after all. He showered, shaved, stared at his closet like it might offer answers. The gray janitor uniform hung there wrinkled from yesterday. Next to it, his old teaching clothes, button-downs, and slacks that hadn't seen daylight in years. They probably didn't even fit anymore. He reached for the teaching clothes anyway. The shirt was tight across the shoulders. The slacks needed a belt he had to punch a new hole in. But when he looked in the mirror, he saw a ghost of Professor Barnes staring back. Older, grayer, more worn, but there. His phone buzzed. Reina, meeting at 2. I'll be in the lobby at 1:45. We go in together. Elliot typed back, you don't have to. I know, I want to. See you then. The hotel looked different in daylight, or maybe Elliot was different. He walked through the service entrance at 1:43 p.m. and immediately felt wrong. Not because of the clothes, though. Yeah, the clothes felt strange, but because he was walking through the wrong door. Employees used the service entrance. Guests used the front. Which was he? Today, he circled around to the main lobby. The marble gleamed like nothing had ever happened here. Like 48 hours ago, he hadn't crossed this floor and changed his life. A different crew worked the desk, different bellhops. The world moved on. Rayna was waiting by the fountain dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Elliot's monthly rent. She looked every inch the CEO, sharp, powerful, untouchable, until she saw him and smiled. "Professor Barnes," she said, "you clean up nice. These are 3 years old and smell like mothballs. I'm choosing to interpret that as vintage." She gestured toward the elevators. "Ready?" "No." "Good, neither am I." She pressed the button. "But we're doing it anyhow." The executive offices were on the 12th floor. Elliot had mopped these halls 100 times, but never actually entered any of the rooms. The doors were always closed. Private, above his pay grade. Now he was walking through one. Ms. Vanderbilt's office was exactly what he expected. Sleek, modern. Windows overlooking the city. Degrees on the wall from schools that cost more than small countries. A desk that could double as an aircraft carrier. Behind it sat Ms. Vanderbilt. Next to her, Marcus Whitfield, looking smug. And beside him, a man Elliot didn't recognize, late 50s expensive suit lawyer, written all over him. "Mr. Barnes." Ms. Vanderbilt stood, extending a hand. "Thank you for coming." Elliot shook it. Her grip was firm, calculated. "Ms. Saito." Vanderbilt's smile was porcelain. "We weren't expecting you." "I'm aware." Rayna sat without being invited. "Continue." A flicker of annoyance crossed Vanderbilt's face, gone so fast, Elliot almost missed it. She gestured for everyone to sit. Elliot took the chair beside Rayna, hyper-aware of Marcus's eyes drilling holes in the side of his head. "Mr. Barnes," Vanderbilt began, "I want to start by saying the Royal Grand values all our employees. Every member of our team contributes to our 5-star reputation." Here it came, the corporate speak, the setup. "However," she continued, "we also have protocols, standards of conduct, and what happened 2 days ago in our lobby, while well-intentioned, violated several of those protocols." "Which ones?" Rayna asked. Vanderbilt blinked. "Excuse me, which protocols did Mr. Barnes violate specifically?" The lawyer, who still hadn't introduced himself, leaned forward. "Mr. Barnes abandoned his assigned duties to interfere with the check-in process. He accessed guest information without authorization. He engaged with a client outside his job description, creating a potential liability situation." "He helped me," Rayna said flatly. "Your staff was failing. He succeeded." "The optics," Vanderbilt started. "The optics are that your day manager was condescending to a guest. Your staff stood by and watched, and the only person with the decency to help was someone you pay to be invisible." Rayna's voice could have cut glass. "Those are the optics, which is why you have a PR crisis." Marcus finally spoke. "With all due respect, Ms. Saito, if Barnes hadn't made a scene, if I hadn't made a scene..." Elliot turned to look at Marcus directly for the first time. "I spoke Japanese. I offered tea. That's a scene. You humiliated the staff." "No." Elliot's voice was calm, steady. "You humiliated yourselves. I just spoke a language you couldn't." "That's enough." Vanderbilt held up a hand. "Mr. Barnes, we're prepared to offer you a severance package. 3 months' salary, continuation of benefits for 6 months, and a non-disclosure agreement regarding the incident." There it was, the price of his silence. "You're firing him." Rayna wasn't asking. "We're offering a generous separation package that acknowledges his service while protecting the hotel's reputation. By silencing him. By moving forward professionally. The lawyer slid a document across the desk. Mr. Barnes, if you'll review Section 3, you'll see the terms clearly outlined. In exchange for the severance, you agree not to discuss the incident publicly, not to disparage the Royal Grand or its staff, and to decline any media requests for comment. Elliot stared at the paper, at the dollar amount, at the word severance in bold print. 3 months' salary was more money than he'd seen in one place since Yuki died. 6 months of insurance meant Charlotte's checkups covered, her therapy sessions, the medication for her anxiety. It meant safety. It meant going back to invisible. Can I ask a question? Elliot's voice sounded distant to his own ears. Of course, Vanderbilt said. If I hadn't spoken Japanese, if I just kept mopping and let Ms. Saito stand there struggling, would we be having this meeting? Silence. Would I be getting fired for doing nothing? You're not being fired, the lawyer said smoothly. You're being offered a bribe. Raina stood. Let's call it what it is. You're paying him to disappear so the viral video doesn't turn into a lawsuit or a boycott or whatever you're actually afraid of. She turned to Vanderbilt. Here's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid that 3 months from now another guest will need help, and the only person who would have stepped forward will be gone. Because you taught everyone here that kindness gets punished. Ms. Saito, I understand you're upset. I'm not upset, I'm disappointed. Raina pulled out her phone. Do you want to know what happened after your manager mocked my silence after Mr. Barnes walked away? I don't think... Raina tapped her screen. A recording started playing, Marcus's voice tinny but clear. Can you believe that speaks perfect English the whole time? She was screwing with us. Another voice, Tyler, the bellhop. Barnes made us all look like idiots. Barnes made himself look like an idiot, Marcus replied. Janitor playing hero. I'm writing him up. Insubordination, abandoning his post, all of it. Ms. Vanderbilt's face went pale. The recording continued, Tyler laughing. Marcus saying something about knowing his place. Another staff member chiming in with a comment about uppity maintenance workers. And then crystal clear Marcus again. Besides, who's going to believe a janitor over management guys? A nobody. Raina stopped the recording. The office was so quiet, Elliot could hear his own heartbeat. I recorded this, Raina said, because I wanted to remember. I wanted proof that I wasn't imagining the contempt, that it wasn't just culture shock or jet lag or my own insecurity. She looked at Marcus. Turns out it was real. You really do think he's a nobody. Marcus had gone from smug to gray. That was taken out of context. Was it what context makes knowing his place acceptable? Raina turned back to Vanderbilt. I'm guessing your legal team would love to explain that context to the press, or to the labor board, or to the judge in the wrongful termination suit Mr. Barnes could file. The lawyer started to speak, stopped, started again. Ms. Saito threatening legal action. I'm not threatening anything, I'm observing. Mr. Barnes helped a guest. Your manager retaliated. You're now trying to silence him. That's textbook retaliation, and I know this because Saito Industries has excellent lawyers who brief me on exactly these situations. Vanderbilt's professional mask was cracking. What do you want? I want you to apologize to him right now. Ms. Saito, apologize for treating him like he's disposable, for reducing a man with a doctorate in linguistics to someone who should know his place, for making him choose between dignity and a paycheck. Elliot found his voice. I don't need... Yes, you do. Raina looked at him, and her eyes were fierce. You deserve it, and if you don't demand it, they'll never give it. Not to you, not to the next person, not to anyone who doesn't fit their idea of what matters. The moment stretched. Elliot could feel Marcus seething, could see Vanderbilt calculating, could sense the lawyer trying to figure out how to spin this. Finally, Vanderbilt spoke. Mr. Barnes, I apologize. Your actions were... She paused, choosing words carefully, well-intentioned. And we appreciate your service to the Royal Grand. It was the emptiest apology Elliot had ever heard. corporate paint over genuine contempt. But Raina wasn't done. "Fire Marcus," she said. "What?" Marcus half stood. "You can't." "I can't, you're right." Raina smiled. It wasn't kind. "But I can move Saito Industries' corporate housing contract to the Belmond. They're courting our business anyway. That's 47 rooms booked year-round. I can also mention to my colleagues in the Japan Business Association that the Royal Grand might not be the most welcoming environment for international executives. And I can absolutely make sure that recording gets shared with every diversity and inclusion consultant in the hospitality industry." Vanderbilt's jaw tightened. "That's business. You understand business, don't you?" Raina sat back down. "Marcus created a hostile work environment. He retaliated against an employee for helping a guest. And he did it because that employee dared to be competent in a language Marcus couldn't speak. That's not just bad management, it's liability." The lawyer whispered something to Vanderbilt. She nodded, looked at Marcus. "Whitfield, we'll discuss this privately." "You're seriously considering privately," Vanderbilt repeated. Marcus stood jaw working like he wanted to say 1,000 things and couldn't say any of them. He looked at Elliot with pure hatred. "This isn't over," he muttered. "Yeah," Elliot said quietly, "it is." Marcus left. The door closed with a decisive click. Vanderbilt exhaled slowly. Saito, I appreciate your business, but strong-arming us into personnel decisions isn't strong-arming, it's consequences. You taught your staff that kindness doesn't matter, that helping people is stepping out of line, that knowing your place is more important than knowing how to help. Raina stood again. "I'm teaching you that those lessons have costs." "And what about Mr. Barnes?" the lawyer asked. "What happens to him? That's his decision." Raina looked at Elliot. "Not yours, not mine, his." Every eye turned to Elliot. He looked at the severance package on the desk, at the safety it represented, at the silence it demanded. Then he looked at Raina, who'd stood beside him when she didn't have to, who'd fought for him when fighting was the hard choice. And he thought about Charlotte asking him not to hide anymore. "I don't want the severance," he said. Vanderbilt blinked. "Mr. Barnes, I don't want it. I don't want to sign away what happened. I don't want to pretend it didn't matter." He stood, and his voice was steady. "I helped a guest. I did my job. Better than the people you pay to do it. And if that's a firing offense, then fire me, but don't pay me to lie about it." The lawyer started scribbling notes. Vanderbilt looked like she'd swallowed something bitter. "What do you want?" she asked. It was a good question. What did he want? "I want to not be afraid," Elliot said slowly. "I want to walk into work and not worry that speaking up means losing everything. I want other people like Maria in housekeeping, or the night crew, or anyone who's ever been told to know their place. I want them to know that helping matters more than hierarchy." "That's very idealistic," the lawyer said dryly. "Yeah, it is." Elliot looked at him. "You should try it sometime." Raina actually laughed, quick and genuine. Vanderbilt rubbed her temples. "Mr. Barnes, I can offer you your position back, with assurances that there will be no retaliation. We can even look into a raise given your additional skills." "I don't want my position back." That got everyone's attention. "I appreciate the offer," Elliot continued, "but Ms. Saito offered me something better. Translation work, cultural consulting, a job that uses what I actually know instead of just existing quietly." He turned to Raina. "If that offer's still open," she smiled. "It's open." "Then I accept." Vanderbilt's expression was unreadable. "I see, and the non-disclosure agreement won't be necessary," Raina said. "Mr. Barnes won't be discussing this incident, not because you paid him, because he's moving forward, like you suggested." The irony in her voice could have flavored tea. The meeting ended 10 minutes later with Vanderbilt's forced pleasantries and the lawyer's dire warnings about defamation. Elliot signed paperwork releasing him from employment, collected his final paycheck, walked out of that office for the last time. In the elevator, he started shaking. You okay? Raina asked. I just quit my job. You just took a better one. I haven't stood up like that since... He couldn't finish the sentence. Since your wife died. Raina said it gently. You've been surviving. Now you're living. It's scary. Terrifying. Good. Terrifying means it matters. The elevator opened to the lobby, their lobby, where everything had started. Elliot looked across that marble expanse and saw it differently now, not as a place where he was invisible, but as a place where he'd chosen to be seen. Come on, Raina said. I have someone I want you to meet. She led him to the hotel restaurant past the lunch crowd to a quiet table in the corner. An older woman sat there, elegant in a way that suggested money, but not ostentation. Silver hair, kind eyes, hands wrapped around a teacup like it was precious. Elliot Barnes. Raina said, This is my Aunt Hana Saito, my mother's sister. The woman stood, studied Elliot's face, and then in perfect English touched with Kyoto dialect, You look like your wife described you, tall, kind eyes, terrible posture from reading too much. Elliot's breath caught. Yuki talked about me endlessly. In her letters to my sister Keiko, about the American professor who learned Japanese to understand poetry, who proposed in terrible keigo that made her laugh until she cried, who held her hand through every treatment, even when the doctors said there was no hope. Tears burned Elliot's eyes. Hana took his hands in hers. Yuki-san told my sister something before she died. She said, My Elliot will forget how to speak, not Japanese, himself. Someone needs to remind him. And Keiko promised she would, but then she got sick too, and... Hana's voice wavered. She made me promise instead, if I ever found you, I would remind you. Remind me of what? That silence is different than silence. Being quiet because you choose peace is powerful. Being quiet because you've forgotten your own voice is tragedy. Hana squeezed his hands. Yuki-san wanted you to choose, always choose, even when it hurts. Elliot couldn't speak, couldn't breathe past the grief and gratitude tangled in his chest. Raina cleared her throat. Aunt Hana has been helping me research you after I realized who you were. She wanted to meet you, to deliver Keiko's message. And Yuki's, Hana added, but also to say thank you. You taught my sister's daughter how to see dignity in silence, and she taught the Royal Grand Hotel the same lesson. Poetry, yes. Something like that. Elliot managed. They sat, talked. Hana told stories about Keiko, about the letters she'd saved, about the tea ceremony set Yuki had given her sister that Hana still used every morning. Raina added details about her mother's last days, about the cherry blossoms, about the promise to find Elliot, if she ever could. And Elliot listened, feeling pieces of his past reconnect with his present in ways that felt impossible and inevitable at the same time. By the time they finished, the lunch crowd had thinned. The restaurant had that late afternoon quiet that felt liminal, between times, between worlds. I need to pick up Charlotte, Elliot said, checking his watch. 3:47, the same time everything had changed 2 days ago. Bring her tomorrow, Raina said, to the office. Let her see where her father will be working. Let her meet people who value him. She's shy. So are you. You'll figure it out together. Elliot stood to leave, stopped, turned back. Thank you, he said, for standing up when I couldn't. You stood up, Raina corrected. I just stood beside you. There's a difference. Outside, the autumn sun was setting early, painting the city in amber and gold. Elliot walked to the bus stop, but this time he wasn't running, wasn't calculating, wasn't afraid. His phone buzzed, a text from Maria, the housekeeper. Heard what happened, you're a legend. Also, I'm stealing your move. Next time someone's rude, I'm just going to start speaking Spanish and watching them panic. Elliot smiled, typed back, do it, burn the place down. Another buzz, Tyler the bellhop. Marcus is gone. Vanderbilt canned him an hour ago. Everyone's talking about you. It's wild. And another from Mrs. Chen. Charlotte wants pizza for dinner. You buying fancy translator, man? The bus arrived. Elliot climbed on, found a seat, and looked out the window as the city scrolled past. He thought about Yuki, about Keiko, about Hana's words, choose, always choose. He'd chosen today, chosen to stand up, chosen to risk safety for dignity, chosen to remember that he was more than invisible. It was the first choice he'd made in 3 years that felt like living instead of surviving. And it was terrifying and exhilarating and right in ways he couldn't name. When he got home, Charlotte was waiting on the stoop, still in her school clothes, backpack at her feet. "Mrs. Chen said you quit your job," she said. "I did. And you took a new one." "I did." Charlotte studied him. Then carefully, "Are you scared?" "Yes." "Me too." "Yeah. But the good kind of scared, like before something fun." She stood, picked up her backpack. "Mrs. Chen said we're getting pizza." "We are. Can we get the one with the weird olives you like? If you get extra cheese?" "Deal." They walked to the pizza place 2 blocks over, hand in hand, while the sun set and the streetlights flickered on, and the world kept turning the way it always did. Except now, somehow, it felt different. Felt like a world where Elliot Barnes existed again. Not just as Charlotte's dad, not just as the former professor, not just as the janitor who spoke Japanese, but as all of it. Every piece, every choice, every messy, complicated, terrifying part of being human. And for the first time since Yuki died, that felt like enough. The pizza had extra cheese and weird olives, and for the first time in longer than Elliot could remember, dinner felt like more than just fuel. Charlotte asked questions, careful, measured questions, about the new job, about Reina, about what it meant that someone had known Mom in Japan, and Elliot answered honestly, watching his daughter's face shift between curiosity and something that looked almost like hope. 3 days later, Elliot stood in front of Saito Industries' temporary office space in Midtown, holding Charlotte's hand a little too tight. "You're nervous," Charlotte observed. "A little." "Me too." "You don't have to be. It's just meeting someone." Charlotte gave him that look, the one that said she was 10, but saw right through adult nonsense. "You like her. I respect her." "That's not what I said." Elliot squeezed her hand. "Come on, we're late." The office was smaller than he expected. Not corporate sterile, but warm, exposed brick, plants in the corners, desks arranged in clusters instead of rows. Through the glass wall of the main conference room, he could see Reina talking to someone on a video call, gesturing with the kind of controlled energy that meant negotiations. A young woman at the reception desk looked up and smiled. "Mr. Barnes." "Yes, and this is Charlotte." "Hi, Charlotte, I'm Amy. Ms. Saito said you might be hungry after school." She pulled out a plate of cookies, real cookies, not the sad store-bought kind. "Chocolate chip, okay?" Charlotte nodded, suddenly shy, pressing closer to Elliot's side. "She'll be done in about 5 minutes, Amy said. "You can wait in her office if you want. Second door on the left." Reina's office was nothing like Vanderbilt's aircraft carrier desk. A simple wooden table, 2 chairs, bookshelves crammed with volumes in multiple languages, and on the wall, a photograph, black and white, slightly faded. A tea ceremony. Women in kimono seated around a low table, focused and serene. Charlotte walked right up to it. "Is that Mom?" Elliot's heart stopped. He moved closer, looked. Third woman from the left, younger than he remembered, but unmistakably Yuki. Hair pulled back, hands positioned perfectly over a tea bowl, that small smile she wore when she was truly happy. "Yeah," he whispered, "that's Mom. She's pretty. She was beautiful." Charlotte touched the frame gently. "Who are the others?" "Students, probably. People she taught." Elliot scanned the faces. One woman looked familiar, older than the others, elegant features. That might be Keiko, Reina's mother. "Can I ask her?" "Ask me what?" They turned. Reina stood in the doorway, professional facade softened by genuine warmth. "About the picture," Charlotte said, then immediately looked at her shoes. "Of course." Reina came closer, kneeling so she was eye level with Charlotte. "I'm Reina. You must be Charlotte. Your dad's told me about you. Charlotte glanced at Elliot. He nodded encouragement. He told me about you too, Charlotte managed. Good things, I hope. He said you knew my mom, in Japan. Raina's expression shifted something raw and real beneath the polish. My mother knew your mom. She took tea ceremony classes from her in Kyoto. This photo is from the last class before my mother moved back to Tokyo. She pointed. That's her, next to your mom. Charlotte studied the image. They look happy. They were. My mother talked about those classes for years. Said your mom taught her that being still wasn't the same as being empty. That silence could be full. Raina paused. She talked about you too. Charlotte's eyes widened. Me. Your mom would bring you sometimes. You were little, maybe 3. My mother said you used to draw pictures during the ceremonies, very seriously, like you were documenting something important. I don't remember. That's okay, but it happened. Your mom was very proud. Said you saw the world differently, noticed things other people missed. Charlotte looked at Elliot. Did I? You did, he said softly. You still do. The moment hung there, fragile and precious. Then Raina stood. Charlotte, I have something I've been saving. Would you like to see it? Charlotte nodded. Raina walked to her desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a small silk pouch. She handed it to Charlotte carefully like it was made of glass. Charlotte opened it. Inside was a bracelet, delicate silver chain with a single charm, a cherry blossom carved from pale pink stone. My mother bought 2 of these, Raina explained. One for herself, one for your mom, matching, a symbol of their friendship. She paused. When my mother died, I found hers in her jewelry box, but I never knew what happened to the other one. Elliot's throat tightened. Yuki wore hers every day until... He couldn't finish. Until she got too sick, Charlotte said quietly, matter of fact, the way kids are when they've learned to live with grief. It's in the box with her things, in Dad's closet. Raina's eyes filled. She blinked fast, professional mask slipping. Would you want to wear this one, the match? Charlotte looked at the bracelet, at Raina, at Elliot. Can I, she asked him, if you want to. Charlotte held out her wrist. Raina fastened the bracelet with careful fingers. It was slightly too big, hung loose, but Charlotte stared at it like it was magic. Thank you, she whispered. You're welcome. Raina's voice was thick. Your mom would have wanted you to have it. They stood there, 3 people connected by loss and silver and memories that refused to fade. Eventually, Amy knocked gently. Ms. Saito, you have the 3 o'clock with Tokyo. Right, yes, Raina collected herself. Charlotte, there's a lounge area with books and games if you want to hang out while your dad and I talk boring work stuff. Charlotte looked torn between curiosity and shyness. Amy makes excellent hot chocolate, Raina added. That decided it. Charlotte followed Amy out, glancing back once to make sure Elliot wasn't disappearing. When they were alone, Raina sagged into her chair. I wasn't ready for that. For what? For her to look so much like Yuki. Same eyes, same way of watching the world, like she's cataloging it. Raina rubbed her face. God, I'm a mess. You're human. Debatable, but she smiled. Thank you for bringing her. You asked me to. I know, but you could have said no. Could have kept her separate from all this. Raina met his eyes. It would have been easier. Yeah, it would have. Elliot sat across from her. But Charlotte asked me not to hide anymore, and I'm trying to honor that. How's it going, Amorifying? Good. They talked business, then translation protocols, client expectations, hours, and salary and benefits that made Elliot's head spin. He'd start Monday, part-time at first building to full-time as they established the New York office. Flexible hours because single parent, health insurance that actually covered things, a salary that meant Charlotte could have a birthday party this year, maybe even the trampoline place she'd been not so subtly hinting about. But beneath the professional discussion, something else hummed, an understanding that went beyond job descriptions. Two people who'd loved and lost, finding unexpected connection in the wreckage. "Can I ask you something?" Raina said when the paperwork was done. "Sure." "Why did you really leave teaching?" Elliot was quiet for a long moment, because standing in front of students and pretending to have answers felt like lying. "After Yuki died, I didn't have answers, didn't even have questions, just static." He stared at his hands. "And every time I tried to teach, every time I opened my mouth to explain grammar or syntax or cultural context, all I could think was, my wife is dead and I'm talking about particles, like any of it mattered, mate." "It did matter, it does. Maybe, but I couldn't feel it anymore, couldn't access why I'd loved it." He looked up. "Have you ever felt that, like you're going through motions but the meaning is gone?" Raina laughed, but it was hollow. "I've built an entire career on going through motions. My father's company, my mother's expectations, the trajectory everyone assumed I'd follow." She gestured at the office. "This is supposed to be my big move, prove I can expand internationally. But half the time I wonder if I'm doing it because I want to or because it's the next logical step." "Why are you really here?" Elliot asked. "In New York? Honestly, I'm running from Tokyo, from my father's shadow, from people who knew my mother and look at me like I'm failing her memory by not being her." She smiled sadly. "At least here I can fail in private." "You're not failing." "How would you know?" "Because you fought for a janitor you didn't know, stood up to a corporation when you didn't have to, gave my daughter a piece of her mother back." Elliot's voice was firm. "That's not failure, that's being decent when it's inconvenient, and that matters more than by the business expansion." Raina looked at him for a long moment. "Your wife chose well. I got lucky. Luck is meeting the right person. Choice is keeping them." She paused. "She chose you every day, didn't she?" "Yeah, even when I was difficult." "Especially then." Raina stood, walked to the window. The city sprawled below, indifferent and immense. "My mother used to say that love is just choosing the same person over and over, even when they're annoying, even when you're tired, especially when it would be easier to walk away." Sounds exhausting. It is. It's also the only thing that matters. They stood in silence, watching the city move. Eventually, Charlotte appeared in the doorway, hot chocolate mustache and all. "Amy says there's a bookstore downstairs. Can we go?" "We should probably head home," Elliot started. "Actually," Raina interrupted, "I could use a book recommendation. Mind if I join you?" Charlotte's face lit up. "Really? Really? But you have to promise to show me the best books, not the popular ones, the good ones." "I can do that." The bookstore was one of those cramped, independent places that smelled like paper and coffee and possibility. Charlotte navigated the aisles like she owned them, pulling volumes off shelves with confident precision. "This one," she said, handing Raina an illustrated book about constellations. "It's pretty and sad, but good sad." Raina flipped through pages of stars and myths and scientific diagrams blended into art. "Why is it sad?" "Because the stars are so far away. They're beautiful, but you can't touch them. You can only look." Charlotte's voice was soft, like remembering people who aren't here anymore. Elliot's chest constricted. Raina knelt down eye level with Charlotte again. "That's very wise, and very sad, and very true." She paused. "Do you look at stars a lot?" Charlotte nodded. "Dad and I do, on the roof of our building, when it's clear." "What's your favorite constellation?" "Orion, because of the story. The hunter who got too proud and the scorpion that stopped him. It's a lesson, kind of." "What's the lesson?" Charlotte thought about it. "That everyone has something that can hurt them, even big, strong hunters, and sometimes the small things matter most." Raina looked at Elliot over Charlotte's head. Her eyes said, "Your daughter is remarkable." His eyes said, "I know. It terrifies me." They bought the book, and 3 others Charlotte insisted were essential, and one more that Raina grabbed, a slim volume of poetry translated from Japanese. Outside, the autumn evening had turned crisp. Charlotte walked between them, swinging her bookstore bag, the silver bracelet catching streetlight. "Can I ask you something?" Charlotte said to Raina. "Always." "Do you miss your ma?" Elliot started to intervene. "Charlotte, that's personal." But Raina held up a hand. "Every day," she said simply. "Even the annoying parts. The way she'd call me at 6 a.m. Tokyo time and forget I was in a different time zone. How she'd send me articles about getting married like I was running out of time. Her terrible jokes that only she thought were funny." "Dad tells Mom's jokes sometimes," Charlotte said. "They're bad too." "The worst," Elliot agreed. "But you still tell them." "Yeah," Charlotte nodded, satisfied. "Good." At the subway entrance, Raina stopped. "This was nice. Thank you for sharing her with me." "She liked you," Elliot said. "That's rare." "I like her too." Raina crouched down one more time. "Charlotte, can I tell you something my mother told me?" Charlotte nodded. "She said that when someone dies, we think we have to let them go, but we don't. We carry them with us in how we see the world, how we treat people, in the things they taught us." Raina touched the bracelet on Charlotte's wrist. "Your mom is in how your dad speaks Japanese, in how he sees people who need help, in how you notice the sad, beautiful things. She's not gone, she's just different." Charlotte's eyes were wet, like stars. Exactly like stars. Far away, but still there, still beautiful. Charlotte threw her arms around Raina's neck, fast, unexpected, the kind of hug that children give when words aren't enough. Raina hugged back, and Elliot saw her face crumple for just a second before she got control again. When Charlotte pulled away, she was smiling through tears. "Can we do this again? Any time you want." On the subway ride home, Charlotte fell asleep against Elliot's shoulder, new books in her lap, bracelet glinting in the fluorescent light. Elliot pulled out his phone, texted Raina, "Thank you for today, for all of it." The reply came fast. "Thank you for trusting me with her and with your grief. I know that's not easy." He typed, "It's getting easier." Then after a pause, "Yuki would have liked you." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "I wish I could have known her better, but I'm glad I know you." Elliot read that message 3 times before pocketing his phone. At home, Mrs. Chen met them with raised eyebrows. Late dinner, new books, big smile on little girl's face. "Today was good. Today was good," Elliot confirmed. "Finally." Mrs. Chen patted his cheek. "About time you remember how to live." That night, after Charlotte was asleep, Elliot went to his closet, pulled down the box he'd packed 3 years ago and hadn't opened since. Yuki's things, her favorite scarf, a journal in Japanese, photos from Kyoto, and at the bottom in a small velvet pouch the matching cherry blossom bracelet. He held it up to the light. The twin to the one Charlotte now wore. The set was complete again. 2 halves of a friendship separated by death, reunited by chance and grief, and a janitor who'd spoken Japanese in a hotel lobby. Elliot put the bracelet on his bedside table where he could see it. Then he opened his laptop and did something he hadn't done in 3 years. He started writing, not anything important, just observations about the hotel, about Raina, about Charlotte's face when she talked about stars, words that mattered because they were true, because somewhere Yuki had told Keiko to remind him. And Keiko had told Hana, and Hana had told Raina, and Raina had stood beside him when he couldn't stand alone. And now he was choosing to speak again, to live again, to remember that silence was different than being silenced. His phone buzzed. "Raina, again. I can't stop thinking about what Charlotte said, about stars being beautiful because you can't touch them." Elliot typed, "She's been like that since she was small, sees things sideways." Like her father. Her mother, actually. Yuki saw the world in metaphors. "What's your metaphor?" Elliot thought about it, about mopping floors and teaching linguistics and losing everything and finding something unexpected in a hotel lobby. He wrote, "I think I'm a translation, something that exists between languages, not quite one thing or another, just Bridge. Bridges are important, Raina replied. They connect places that were separate. Yeah, but they're also stuck in the middle, or they're exactly where they need to be. Elliot smiled at the screen, started to type a response. Stopped. Started again. Want to get coffee tomorrow, after I drop Charlotte at school. The three dots danced for what felt like forever. Then I'd like that. There's a place near the office. Terrible coffee, excellent pastries. 9 a.m. It's a date. He sent it before he could overthink it, then immediately panicked because it was not a date. It was coffee. It was professional. It was good. I'll wear something date appropriate. Elliot laughed out loud in the dark. His phone buzzed one more time. Elliot, thank you for today, for Charlotte, for reminding me why I'm doing any of this. Why are you doing it? Because somewhere my mother is watching, and your wife is watching, and they're both probably judging our terrible life choices and hoping we figure it out before we're old. Too late, I'm already old. You're 43, that's not old, that's distinguished. Distinguished is code for gray hair. Distinguished is code for hot professor who speaks Japanese. Own it. Elliot stared at the message, at the word hot, sitting there in his text thread like it belonged. He typed, your trouble. I know, sleep well, Professor Barnes. You too, Ms. Saito. He set down the phone, looked at the bracelet on his nightstand, at the box of Yuki's things still open on the floor, at the laptop screen showing words he'd written, not academic, not polished, just honest. Outside his window, the city hummed its endless song. Somewhere in that sprawl, Raina was probably still working. Charlotte was sleeping with new books beside her bed. Mrs. Chen was watching late-night TV and judging everyone's life choices. And Elliot was here, in the middle, between grief and healing, between invisible and seen, between who he was and who he might become, a bridge, exactly where he needed to be. He closed his laptop, turned off the light, and fell asleep thinking about terrible coffee and excellent pastries, and the way Raina's eyes had filled when Charlotte hugged her. Tomorrow would come with its complications and fears and uncertainties. But tonight, for the first time in 3 years, Elliot Barnes went to sleep, feeling something other than numb. He felt hopeful, and that was terrifying and beautiful in equal measure. Morning arrived with Charlotte standing over his bed, already dressed, backpack ready. You have a date, she announced. Elliot groaned into his pillow. It's coffee, with my new boss. At 9 a.m., after you shave, that's a date. You're 10. I watch TV. Charlotte sat on the edge of his bed, serious now. Dad, it's okay to like someone. Elliot sat up, rubbing sleep from his eyes. I know. Do you? The question hung there. Charlotte's dark eyes, Yuki's eyes, waiting for truth. I'm trying to, he said finally. It feels weird. Because of Mom. Yeah. Charlotte nodded slowly. Then, with the gravity of someone 3 times her age, Mom's not here, but you are, and being sad forever doesn't bring her back. It just makes you alone. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just started listening. She stood. Now get up. You smell like sleep, and you need to look nice. The coffee shop was called The Daily Grind, and Raina hadn't lied about the coffee. It tasted like burnt regret. But the almond croissants were transcendent, and Raina was already there when Elliot arrived, looking less CEO and more human in jeans and a soft sweater. You're early, she said. Charlotte rushed me out. He slid into the chair across from her. Apparently I had to look nice. You succeeded. I showered. The bar is low. Raina laughed, and the sound made something in Elliot's chest loosen. How does she feel about all this, the job change, the new people in your life? She told me this morning that being sad forever just makes me alone. She's not wrong. She's also 10. 10-year-olds see things adults work very hard to ignore. Raina pushed a croissant toward him. Eat. You look like you skipped breakfast. I did. Why? Nervous stomach. About coffee with me. About everything. New job Monday. Charlotte asking hard questions. You being you. He tore off a piece of croissant, not quite meeting her eyes. It's a lot. Want to know a secret? Raina leaned forward. I'm terrified too. Of what? That I'll mess this up. The company, the New York office. This, whatever this is. She gestured between them. I'm good at business. I'm terrible at people. You were good with Charlotte. Charlotte is easy. She's honest. Adults lie. Raina sipped her terrible coffee. You want to know why I really pushed so hard at that meeting with Vanderbilt? Because it was the right thing to do. Because I was angry. Not at the hotel. At myself. She set down her cup. I've spent my whole life being quiet when I should have spoken up. Letting people underestimate me because it was easier. Playing the perfect daughter, the good executive, the woman who doesn't make waves. Her voice went soft. And then I watched you walk across that lobby and just help. Without calculating. Without worrying about consequences. And I thought, when did I become someone who's afraid of being kind? Elliot understood that feeling. The erosion of self, the slow retreat into safety. After Yuki died, he said, I convinced myself that small was better. Invisible meant I couldn't lose anything else. Couldn't fail anyone. He finally looked at her. But Charlotte was right. It just made me alone. Are you still alone? Less than I was. Raina smiled. Good answer. They talked for 2 hours about Tokyo and New York, about impossible fathers and impossible grief, about Charlotte's love of stars and Raina's secret passion for terrible reality TV. Small things, true things. The kind of conversation that happens when two people stop performing and start existing. When Elliot finally checked his watch, it was past 11. I should go, he said, not moving. You should. Raina agreed, not moving either. I have errands, laundry. Charlotte needs new shoes because apparently she grew 3 inches when I wasn't looking. Kids do that. It's inconvenient. Most good things are. Raina stood finally. Elliot, thank you for this, for being honest. I didn't do anything. You showed up, that's something. They walked out together into autumn sunshine that felt almost warm. At the corner where their paths split, Raina paused. I'm having dinner with Aunt Hannah on Friday. She wants to hear more about the children's book idea. Elliot blinked. What children's book idea? The one I'm going to write with Charlotte if she's interested. Raina's eyes were bright. About a girl who speaks in drawings instead of words, who sees the world differently, who learns that silence can be powerful. That's Charlotte. I know, and I think she'd be an amazing co-author, if you're okay with it. Elliot thought about his daughter, who noticed some beautiful things, who spoke carefully because the world felt big and overwhelming, who'd been waiting for him to stop hiding. She'd love it, he said. But Raina, you don't have to. I want to. I've wanted to write something real for years, not business reports or strategic plans, something that matters. She smiled. Besides, Charlotte has good taste in books. I trust her judgment. They stood there on the corner, people streaming past the city, loud and indifferent around them. Friday dinner, Elliot said. Can we come, Charlotte and me? I was hoping you'd ask. The weeks that followed had a dreamlike quality. Elliot started at Saito Industries on Monday, translating contracts and cultural briefings, remembering what it felt like to use his brain for more than calculating bus schedules. Charlotte came to the office after school twice a week, working on the book with Raina in the conference room, drawing pictures while Raina wrote, their heads bent together over pages filled with stars and silence. And slowly, quietly, something shifted. Charlotte started speaking more, not dramatically, not suddenly, but in small increments that Elliot cataloged like precious data, full sentences instead of fragments, questions instead of nods. Her speech therapist called it progress. Elliot called it miracle. One evening in late November, they were on the roof of their building, their usual stargazing spot wrapped in blankets against the cold. Dad? Charlotte's voice was soft. Yeah. Do you think Mom would like Raina? Elliot's breath caught. I think so. Why? Because you smile different now. When you talk about her, like you used to smile about Mom, from pictures. Charlotte paused. Is that okay? Is it okay with you? Charlotte thought about it, serious and careful. Mom's not coming back, I know that. And being sad doesn't change it. She looked up at the stars. But being happy might change us, in good ways. When did you get so smart? I told you, I've always been smart. She snuggled closer. I like Raina. She listens, really listens, not like she's waiting to talk, like she actually cares what I say. She does care. I know. Charlotte was quiet for a moment. Then, Dad, what's that? She pointed at the sky, at Orion clear and bright in the winter darkness. You know Orion. No, I mean, I want to practice saying it. Charlotte took a breath. Sky. The word came out whole, clear, no hesitation. Sky, she said again stronger. Sky, sky, sky. Elliot's eyes burned. That's perfect, sweetheart. I've been practicing with Raina. She said sometimes you have to say things out loud to make them real. Charlotte turned to him. Is that true? Yeah, I think it is. Then I want to say something else. She sat up, facing him directly. I love you, and I'm proud of you, for being brave, for helping that lady, for being more than sad. Elliot pulled her into a hug before he could fall apart. I love you too, so much. I know. Charlotte's voice was muffled against his jacket. Mom knew too. That's why she told Keiko to find you, to remind you. They stayed on the roof until the cold drove them inside, Charlotte naming constellations in her clear new voice, Elliot listening like each word was prayer. That night, after Charlotte was asleep, Elliot texted Raina. She said sky tonight, full word, clear as anything. The response was immediate. I'm crying in my office and my assistant thinks I'm having a breakdown. Happy breakdown. The best kind. Elliot, she's been working so hard, so brave. I'm so proud of her. He stared at that message. At I'm so proud of her, coming from someone who'd known Charlotte for only weeks, but saw her completely. He typed, thank you for seeing her, for the book, for everything. Thank you for trusting me with her. And with you, Raina. Yeah, I want to say something out loud to make it real. 3 dots. I'm listening. Elliot took a breath, wrote the truth. I think I'm falling for you, and it terrifies me, but I wanted you to know. The dots appeared and disappeared 3 times. 4, 5. Finally, I think I've been falling since you walked across that lobby and spoke my mother's language. And you're right. It's terrifying, but maybe the terrifying things are the ones worth doing. Charlotte said the same thing about being scared before something good. Smart kid. The smartest. They texted until past midnight about nothing and everything, until Raina finally wrote, I have a 6 a.m. call with Tokyo. I should sleep. Sweet dreams. Elliot, one more thing. Yeah, I'm glad you spoke up that day in the lobby. I'm glad you chose to be seen. Me too. Winter deepened. The book took shape, a story about a girl named Luna who drew silence into pictures, who taught her father that quiet wasn't empty but full. Charlotte's drawings filled the margins, delicate and strange and perfect. Raina's words wrapped around them like music. On Christmas Eve, Raina invited them to Aunt Hannah's apartment in the Upper West Side. It was small and warm, filled with the smell of traditional Japanese dishes, mixed with American Christmas cookies. Hannah had decorated a tiny tree with origami cranes, each one a different color. My sister started this tradition, Hannah explained, handing Charlotte a piece of origami paper. 1 crane for each person you're grateful for. Charlotte folded carefully, tongue between her teeth in concentration. When she finished, she hung her crane on the tree, purple and slightly crooked. Who's that for? Hannah asked gently. My mom, Charlotte said clearly, for teaching me it's okay to be quiet, and for sending Raina to find us. Raina's hand found Elliot's under the table, squeezed tight. They ate and talked and laughed, and somewhere between the main course and dessert, Elliot realized this was family, not the one he'd lost, but the one he was building. After dinner, Hannah brought out a small wooden box. "I've been holding this for you," she said to Elliot, "from Keiko. She gave it to me before she died, said if I ever found Yuki's husband, I should give it to him." Inside was a locket, silver, delicate, shaped like a cherry blossom. Elliot's hands shook as he opened it. Inside was a photograph Yuki and Keiko young and laughing at a tea ceremony, and on the other half an inscription in Japanese, "Silence holds truth, truth holds love." "Charlotte," Raina said softly. "Can I see your bracelet?" Charlotte held out her wrist. Raina examined the charm closely. Then she looked at the locket. "They match," she whispered. "The design, the bracelet charm, and the locket. They're a set." Hana nodded. "Yuki and Keiko commissioned them together before Yuki got sick. They each took half. The bracelets, the lockets, a promise that even when separated they were connected." Charlotte reached for the locket, held it next to her bracelet. The designs aligned perfectly, two halves of a whole. "Mom kept hers," Charlotte said, "in the box with her things. And now you have both," Hana said. "The circle is complete." That night, walking home through snow-dusted streets, Charlotte between them holding both their hands, Elliot felt something slot into place. Not healing grief, didn't heal it. Just transformed. But maybe transformation was enough. "Raina," Charlotte said suddenly, "will you keep working on the book with me?" "Of course." "Why?" "Because I want to finish it. I want people to know about silence, about being different, about finding voices you didn't know you had." "We'll finish it," Raina promised. "Together." The manuscript was complete by March. A small publisher, one that specialized in diverse voices, fell in love with it immediately. The Girl Who Drew Silence by Raina Saito and Charlotte Barnes, with illustrations by Charlotte. The book released in late May to quiet success. Not a bestseller, but something better. A book that found the people who needed it. Kids who didn't speak easy, parents who didn't know how to help, teachers looking for windows into different minds. Reviews called it devastating and hopeful, and a meditation on communication beyond words. But Elliot's favorite was from a parent who wrote, "My daughter hasn't spoken in 2 years. She read this book and drew me a picture. It was the first time she'd tried to communicate. Thank you." In June, with Charlotte out of school and summer opening up like possibility, Raina took them to a garden in Brooklyn. Cherry blossoms late in the season, barely hanging on. "I've been thinking," Raina said, as they walked beneath pale pink blooms. "Dangerous," Elliot teased. "Shut up," she smiled. "I've been thinking about what Hana said, about choosing the same person over and over, about love being a decision, not just a feeling." Charlotte had wandered ahead, chasing something only she could see. And Elliot's heart was hammering. "And I choose you, every version of you. Professor Barnes, Janitor Barnes, Translator Barnes, Charlotte's dad, the man who walked across a lobby because kindness mattered more than safety." She turned to face him fully. "I choose you, over and over, if you'll have me." Elliot couldn't speak past the tightness in his throat. "Is that a no?" Raina's voice wavered. "It's a yes. It's 1,000 yeses." He pulled her close, breathing in cherry blossoms and possibility. "I choose you too, even when you're bossy, even when you work too much, especially when you see my daughter and make her feel like she matters." "She does matter. I know, and you see it. That's—" He kissed her temple. "That's everything." Charlotte came running back, face flushed. "Dad, Raina, look." She held out her hand. In her palm, a single cherry blossom petal. It landed on me like a sign. "A sign of what?" Raina asked. Charlotte looked between them, wise and knowing that good things can be delicate and still matter. They were married in September in Hana's backyard. Not a big wedding, just Charlotte and Hana and Amy from the office, and Mrs. Chen, who cried through the whole ceremony. cherry blossom trees that Hannah had planted specifically for this blooming impossibly out of season because she'd chosen a variety that bloomed twice a year. Charlotte was the one who performed the ceremony. A legal officiant walked them through the official parts, but Charlotte had written her own additions. She stood between them in a lavender dress, holding the locket and the bracelets together. "My mom taught Raina's mom about silence," Charlotte said, her voice steady and clear. "And Raina's mom taught my mom about being brave. And now Raina is teaching me that being quiet doesn't mean you have nothing to say. And Dad is teaching Raina that being brave doesn't mean you have to do it alone." She paused. "I think they'd be happy, my mom and Keiko, that we found each other." There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. When Elliot and Raina exchanged rings, Charlotte placed the locket around both their hands, linking them. "This was Mom's," she said, "and Keiko's, and now it's your. A promise that even when you're apart, you're connected." Raina was crying openly now. Elliot wasn't far behind. "I now pronounce you married," the officiant said, smiling. "You may kiss." They did, soft and sweet and full of promise. Charlotte whispered, "Mama found her voice." Later, after cake and terrible dancing, and Hannah telling stories about Keiko that made everyone laugh and cry in equal measure, Elliot found Raina sitting under the cherry blossom shoes off, looking at the stars emerging in the twilight. "Mrs. Barnes," he said, testing it out. "Still Saito professionally," she corrected, "but I like the sound of it personally." He sat beside her. "We did it. We did. You okay? More than okay." She leaned against him. "I'm terrified and happy and overwhelmed and peaceful all at once. That's marriage. That's life." She turned to look at him. "Elliot, thank you." "For what?" "For speaking up, for seeing me, for being brave when I needed someone to show me how." She kissed him softly. "For choosing me back." Charlotte appeared carrying her shoes. "Can I sleep at Aunt Hannah's tonight? She said I could help her make breakfast." "If Aunt Hannah's sure." "I'm sure," Hannah called from inside. "Go be newlyweds. Charlotte and I have origami plans." After Charlotte left, barely glancing back, already chattering to Hannah about crane patterns, Elliot and Raina sat in the growing dark, surrounded by impossible cherry blossoms and the ghost of everything they'd lost and found. "Do you think they're watching?" Raina asked. "Your wife, my mother." "Yeah, I think they are." "What do you think they'd say?" Elliot considered it. "Yuki would say I took too long to figure it out, that she spent years telling me not to hide, but I didn't listen until she made Keiko promise to haunt me." Raina laughed. "Keiko would say I needed to stop being so stubborn, that opening an office in New York was just an excuse to run away from feeling things." Were they right? Probably. Raina sighed. Definitely. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that wasn't empty, but full of understanding and acceptance and the knowledge that sometimes the most important things don't need words. "Elliot," Raina's voice was soft. "Yeah. I'm glad you were mopping floors that day. I'm glad I was too stubborn to speak English. I'm glad everything was exactly wrong enough to be right." "Me too." Even though it was terrifying, especially because it was terrifying, above them stars emerged. Orion, the Pleiades, constellations Charlotte had taught him to see again. "Sometimes silence isn't weakness," Raina said, echoing Charlotte's book. "It's love waiting to be heard." "Yeah," Elliot agreed, "it is." They stayed there until the night grew cold, two people who'd learned to speak through loss, who'd found connection in the spaces between words, who'd discovered that choosing to be seen was terrifying and necessary and worth it. The cherry blossoms scattered in the evening breeze, delicate and perfect and temporary, just like everything beautiful, just like everything that mattered. And in the morning, Charlotte would come home with stories about origami and Aunt Hannah's terrible jokes, and Raina would make coffee that was slightly less terrible than the daily grind. And Elliot would remember what it felt like to be Professor Barnes again, not because the title mattered, but because he'd remembered how to be himself. But tonight, under impossible stars and more impossible blossoms, Elliot Barnes and Reina Saito sat in silence. The good kind. The kind that held everything. The kind that meant love.